My CEO stole my invention and fired me. My ultimate revenge was building a rival empire. The spotlight caught Max Vance's tailored suit, illuminating the triumphant grin plastered across his face. He held the Vance Tech Innovator of the Year award aloft, a gold statuette glinting in the harsh stage lights that bathed the colossal auditorium. The crowd, a sea of industry leaders and eager investors, roared its approval, a cacophony of applause and adulation. This, ladies and gentlemen, he boomed, his voice echoing with practiced confidence, is the fruit of relentless innovation, the culmination of our vision here at Vance Tech Solutions. Our revolutionary AI platform, Project Chimera, is poised to redefine human-computer interaction as we know it. He paused, basking in the sustained ovation. He spoke of its monumental potential, its advanced neural networks, its seamless integration capabilities, all descriptors that I had meticulously crafted in my original proposals. My revolutionary AI-driven platform. My Project Chimera. He held it up as his own, a brilliant, shining lie. I stood to the side, a ghost in the machine, almost deliberately overlooked amidst the throng of sycophantic executives and camera flashes. My hands were casually tucked into my pockets, my expression unreadable, a faint, almost imperceptible curve at the corner of my lips. He truly believed he had won. He believed he had extinguished me, erased my contribution, and sealed his victory with a public spectacle of triumph. He didn't know. My journey to that brightly lit stage, standing in the shadows watching a thief claim my legacy, began long before. It started with a fervent, almost childlike belief in the power of technology to genuinely uplift lives. As Kaelen Thorne, a 32-year-old software engineer, I wasn't driven by quarterly reports or market share. My core drive was innovation that solved real problems, code that could breathe life into concepts that once lived only in science fiction. That's why I joined Vance Tech Solutions. Max Vance, at 48, was then a charismatic figure, a visionary in the public eye, constantly speaking of disruptive innovation and pushing boundaries. He had a way of making you feel like you were part of something monumental, that your individual contribution was valued immensely. Like many, I was initially captivated by his persona, his promise of an environment where creativity could flourish. I threw myself into my work, often spending 80-hour weeks hunched over my keyboard, fueled by caffeine and an unshakable conviction that I was on the cusp of something truly transformative. Project Chimera wasn't just a program, it was a synthesis of years of research, countless failed experiments, and sudden, exhilarating breakthroughs. It was designed not merely to process data but to intuitively understand context, to predict needs, to interact with users in a way that felt almost human. I poured my soul into it, sacrificing personal relationships, foregoing weekends, seeing my apartment more as a pit stop than a home. I trusted Max implicitly, sharing every iterative development, every new algorithm discovery, every breakthrough. He would listen intently, nodding, offering encouraging words, and always asking for more detail, Kaelen, thorough documentation, every line of code, every design spec. I saw this as diligence. In hindsight, it was the meticulous collection of evidence for his impending theft. The cracks in Max's facade began to show subtly. Small things at first. My name being omitted from internal reports, my suggestions being rephrased and presented as his own, a growing evasiveness when I asked about patent applications for Chimera. The corporate structure, once seemingly open, began to feel like a labyrinth designed to isolate me. Then came the meeting, a cold, clinical affair. Max, flanked by lawyers I'd never seen before, informed me, almost dispassionately, that my employment was being terminated, effective immediately, citing vague, restructuring needs. He calmly explained that all work produced during my tenure, including Project Chimera, was company property. His eyes held not a flicker of remorse, only a predatory gleam. He was tying up loose ends, severing any connection I had to my masterpiece. The devastation was immediate, a physical blow that left me gasping for air. It wasn't just losing my job, it was the brutal theft of my intellectual child, the betrayal of trust that ran deeper than any professional slight. But as the initial shock subsided, a cold, crystalline clarity emerged. Max had underestimated me. He saw my passion as naivety, my dedication as blind loyalty. What he didn't realize was that beneath the veneer of the trusting innovator lay a mind that observed, analyzed, and anticipated. Even as I worked on Chimera, an instinct, perhaps a low hum of distrust that I had suppressed, had whispered to me about the cutthroat nature of the industry and Max's reputation for ruthless acquisition. I had watched him operate, seen the swift, almost surgical precision with which he dismissed rivals or absorbed smaller companies. And in those moments, a contingency plan, a silent, unseen defense mechanism began to form in my mind. My secret weapon wasn't a single item but a meticulous, multi-layered strategy born from calculated foresight. First, I had incorporated an almost imperceptible digital fingerprint into Chimera's core architecture. It wasn't just a watermark, it was a complex, time-locked sequence of self-modifying code that would, at a predetermined trigger point, subtly alter certain non-critical functions within the platform, leaving a unique, irrefutable signature that only I could decipher and prove belonged to my original, pre-theft version. This wasn't designed to be destructive, but rather definitive proof of origin and a mechanism to expose the inherent flaws in a stolen, unethically acquired system. Second, I had, over months, quietly and thoroughly documented every step of Chimera's development, not just within Vance Tech's systems but also externally. Every line of code, every design sketch, every research note was regularly time-stamped and notarized by a discrete third-party legal service specializing in intellectual property. This was done off-site, off-network, and completely off Max's radar. I even had anonymous peer reviews of early conceptual frameworks published under a pseudonym in obscure academic journals, establishing prior art. The betrayal cut deep, but it also opened my eyes to the true nature of the corporate battlefield. My devastation didn't lead to despair, it ignited a furious, unyielding determination to reclaim what was mine and to build something far superior, ethically sound, and undeniably my own. I would not just reclaim my legacy, I would dismantle his. The moment I walked out of Vance Tech Solutions for the last time, the initial sting of betrayal morphed into a focused, almost meditative calm. There was no histrionics, no public outcry. I simply disappeared from the industry's immediate view. Max, I knew, would interpret this silence as capitulation, as the broken spirit of a naive engineer. He would assume I was licking my wounds, unable to recover. This assumption was precisely what I needed him to believe. While he was busy preparing to unveil his revolutionary AI platform to the world, I was embarking on my own quiet, relentless campaign. My first step was not to immediately challenge Max in court, that would be slow, costly, and give him too much opportunity to prepare his defenses. My plan required patience and a strategic, almost surgical precision. I began building ArcLight innovations. Starting from scratch was daunting. There were no venture capitalists lining up for a disgraced, recently fired engineer. I liquidated most of my personal assets, leveraged every last penny, and started in a cramped, rented office space, a single desk, and a second-hand server rack. My initial recruits were not industry heavyweights, they were a handful of brilliant, disillusioned engineers and designers I had quietly cultivated relationships with over the years, individuals who, like me, believed in ethical innovation and had grown weary of the corporate greed endemic to the tech world. They knew my story, and they believed in my vision. Our core philosophy was simple: integrity, collaboration, and technology that truly served humanity. We would build not just a product, but a culture. While Max was pouring millions into rebranding my Chimera as Project Genesis, crafting elaborate marketing campaigns and schmoozing investors, I was meticulously refining my original AI. The digital fingerprint I had embedded was now a subtle, active monitoring system. It wasn't designed to crash his system, not yet. Instead, it was collecting data, monitoring his adaptations, and subtly, almost imperceptibly, introducing minor, non-critical inefficiencies that would manifest as intermittent glitches or performance dips. These would be dismissed internally at Vance Tech as bugs, network latency, or growing pains, preventing immediate alarm but sowing seeds of frustration and distrust among their own engineers. Max, blinded by his hubris and focused solely on outward appearances, would rarely delve into the granular technical details. He cared only for the grand narrative. I observed him from afar, tracking Vance Tech's quarterly reports, their public statements, their stock trajectory. His company's valuation was indeed skyrocketing on the back of stolen innovation. Max became even more arrogant, more outspoken, famously dismissing the idea of lone wolf inventors as impractical and irrelevant in the age of corporate giants. He called them dreamers, implied they lacked the commercial acumen to bring true innovation to market. Every one of his public pronouncements, every boast, fueled my resolve. He was building his empire on sand, and I was quietly, methodically, undermining its foundations. I wasn't just building a rival, I was engineering a counter-narrative, a testament to what ethical innovation could achieve. My silent progress was his gravest oversight. He saw only my absence from the headlines, not the quiet, relentless hum of creation from my corner of the world. He was looking for a fight in the open, while I was preparing for a very specific, very public, strategic revelation. The culmination of Max Vance's grand deception arrived as a beacon of his perceived triumph, the Global Tech Innovators Summit. It was the most prestigious event in the industry, live-streamed worldwide, and Max was slated as the keynote speaker, presenting Project Genesis, my stolen work, as the pinnacle of Vance Tech's achievements. The auditorium in San Francisco was overflowing, a veritable who's who of tech, finance, and media. My legal team, discreetly positioned, watched from the wings. I had meticulously timed and orchestrated every element of this moment, for months, years even. This wasn't merely about exposing a thief, it was about demonstrating a fundamental truth about integrity, innovation, and the eventual triumph of genuine purpose. Max took the stage, radiating confidence. He launched into a polished, bombastic presentation, slides flashing behind him displaying sleek graphics and impressive projections of Genesis's market impact. He spoke of its unparalleled efficiency, its groundbreaking algorithms, its predictive intelligence. He even showcased a live demonstration, an interactive interface that was supposed to seamlessly manage complex data sets and provide instant, intuitive solutions. This was the moment. The digital fingerprint, the one I had embedded and kept secret for so long, had reached its pre-programmed activation threshold hours ago. It wasn't a malicious hack, it was an elegantly designed proof of origin, engineered to subtly, yet undeniably, reveal my authorship. As Max triumphantly commanded the Genesis interface to perform a complex data analysis, the system momentarily froze. A flicker, barely perceptible at first, then a series of seemingly minor visual glitches. The elegant interface began to display fragmented data, then a cascade of seemingly random, nonsensical characters. A murmur rippled through the audience. Max's confident smile faltered. He looked at the screen, then back at his technical team in the wings, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. The system was supposed to be flawless. This was live. Then, the true reveal. As Max frantically tapped at the screen, attempting to reassert control, the interface dissolved. In its place, a single, elegant line of code appeared, stark white against the dark backdrop. It wasn't an error message. It was a unique, complex cryptographic signature, one that could only be generated from the earliest, foundational layers of Chimera's original source code, a layer that Max had acquired but never truly understood or altered. Below it, appearing almost as an echo, was my personal developer ID, digitally signed and timestamped to well before Max had even conceptualized Project Genesis. The signature was irrefutable, linked to the notarized documentation I had publicly released just minutes before the summit began, strategically leaked to a handful of ethical tech journalists who were now furiously typing on their laptops. The digital fingerprint I had left wasn't just a signature, it was a proof-of-work algorithm that referenced specific, obscure academic papers I had co-authored anonymously years prior, papers that laid the theoretical groundwork for Chimera's unique architecture. Max hadn't just stolen the code, he had stolen the result of years of my intellectual labor, without understanding its deepest roots. The sudden, public appearance of this code, coupled with the immediate availability of my irrefutable documentation, created an unassailable wall of evidence. Max's face drained of color. His jaw sagged. The triumphant gleam in his eyes was replaced by raw, unadulterated terror. He knew. He looked at me then, across the sea of bewildered faces, his eyes locking with mine. My expression remained calm, collected, a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of my head, a silent acknowledgement that the jig was up. The audience erupted, not with applause, but with a cacophony of gasps, whispers, and furious murmuring. Journalists were on their feet, snapping photos, shouting questions. The live stream, rather than cutting away, focused squarely on Max's unraveling face. The illusion he had so carefully constructed, the empire he had built on stolen foundations, was crumbling, live, before the entire world. The roar of the crowd was no longer one of adulation, but of dawning, indignant realization. Justice, slow and methodical, had finally arrived. The aftermath was swift and brutal, a corporate earthquake whose tremors reverberated across the global tech landscape. Max Vance's public humiliation at the Global Tech Innovators Summit was merely the opening act. Within hours of the reveal, the video stream of his unraveling went viral, dissected frame by countless analysts, legal experts, and ethical watchdogs. The irrefutable proof I had provided, the cryptographic signature, the notarized documents, the cross-referenced academic papers, created a tidal wave that no amount of spin or damage control could contain. Vance Tech's stock plummeted, wiping out billions in market value within the first trading day. Investors who had championed Max's vision now felt manipulated, betrayed. Shareholder lawsuits began piling up immediately, each one a fresh nail in the coffin of his empire. The media, initially just reporting the dramatic meltdown, quickly pivoted to an in-depth investigation into Max Vance's past. Stories of previous unethical business practices, hushed-up intellectual property disputes, and an aggressive, almost predatory corporate culture began to surface, often fueled by disillusioned former Vance Tech employees who finally felt empowered to speak out. The company, once a shining beacon, was now synonymous with corporate malfeasance. Key engineering teams, particularly those who had worked closely on Project Genesis and harbored suspicions about its true origins, began to resign en masse. Many of them reached out to ArcLight Innovations, seeking not just employment but a chance to work for a company whose values aligned with their own. I welcomed them, not with gloating, but with genuine respect and an understanding of the difficult position they had been in. Max Vance himself disappeared from public view almost immediately. The charismatic CEO was replaced by a haunted, broken man. Legal proceedings followed, slow and arduous, but ultimately decisive. The weight of the evidence I had meticulously gathered was insurmountable. While I didn't seek to utterly destroy him for personal gratification, the consequences of his actions were inescapable. He faced significant financial penalties, a permanent ban from holding executive positions in publicly traded companies, and a reputation utterly tarnished beyond repair. Vance Tech Solutions, once a titan, was either dissolved, acquired for pennies on the dollar, or shrunk to a mere shadow of its former self, its name forever stained. The corporate world, for all its ruthlessness, had a surprising intolerance for outright, publicly exposed theft. Months passed, then a year. The dust settled, not silently, but with a profound shift in the industry's landscape. ArcLight Innovations, once a quiet, almost clandestine operation, had flourished. Our ethical foundation, our commitment to genuine innovation, and the undeniable quality of our technology, the truly unadulterated version of my AI platform, resonated deeply with both consumers and a new wave of conscientious investors. We attracted some of the brightest minds in the field, not with exorbitant salaries, but with a culture of collaboration, respect, and a shared purpose. Our growth was organic, sustainable, and built on trust, the very antithesis of Max Vance's empire. I found a profound sense of peace in my work, leading a company that truly reflected my values. The anger, the initial devastation from the betrayal, had long since dissipated, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of having not just survived, but thrived, on my own terms. My journey had taught me that integrity wasn't just a moral virtue, it was a strategic advantage. The path to vindication is rarely a straight line, and true revenge isn't about inflicting equal harm, but about building something so unequivocally superior that the original wrongdoer's actions become irrelevant. I learned that the most potent form of justice isn't found in retribution, but in reclamation, reclaiming your work, your reputation, and your peace of mind. Genuine success is never built on the ashes of another's stolen dreams. It blossoms from the seeds of hard work, ethical conduct, and an unwavering belief in your own intrinsic worth. My story stands not as a testament to cunning, but to the enduring power of integrity, patience, and the profound truth that while talent can be exploited, character will always, ultimately, prevail.